Welcome to Tranquil Sleep, where soothing stories and gentle narration help you find deep rest. It's time now to put the day to bed, wherever you are lying in your favorite spot, maybe beneath a warm blanket, or listening as raindrops tap softly against your window. Allow yourself to settle. Take a slow, deep breath in, and let it go. Feel the rhythm of your own breathing, calm and unhurried, like the slow pull of the tide across the sand. With every breath, you soften a little more. The weight of the day begins to drift away, the thoughts, the lists, the quiet hum of busyness. All of it dissolves into the gentle stillness of this moment. Imagine the sound of gentle waves rolling against the shore. A cool evening breeze brushes softly against your skin. Somewhere nearby, lanterns glow in the twilight, their warm light flickering through drifting mist. And you are wrapped in the comfort of a warm blanket, safe and still, ready to let go and drift with the story. So now, as you breathe in calm and breathe out the day, let's begin tonight's journey, a gentle tale of rain, gardens, and quiet discovery. A story called Secrets of the Hanging Gardens. The rain's beginning. The evening rain began as a whisper, a soft tapping on wide green leaves, a hush spreading across the rooftops of an ancient city. It was the kind of rain that didn't rush or roar, but drifted down gently, like thoughts falling into dreams. The traveler arrived just as twilight deepened, a quiet figure wrapped in a pale cloak, their footsteps soft on the glistening cobblestones. They had come in search of something they couldn't quite name. Not treasure, nor fame, nor even purpose, but perhaps peace. The city around them seemed older than time. Vines climbed over weathered stone arches, and narrow streets wound like rivers through the soft lamplight. The air carried the scent of earth and rain-soaked jasmine. Somewhere in the distance, bells chimed faintly, not to mark the hour, but to call the night gently into being. The traveler paused beneath an archway, tilting their head upward. Through the falling rain, they could see it, the faint outline of something impossibly high above the city. Tiers upon tiers of gardens, suspended in mist and shadow. The Hanging Gardens, the city's oldest secret. Some said they were tended by unseen hands. Others claimed they bloomed only in dreams. But the traveler, watching how the rain flowed down from the terraces like silver rivers, thought that perhaps the truth was somewhere in between. The path of water guided only by curiosity. The traveler began to follow the flow of rainwater through the streets. Each droplet seemed to lead the way, trickling along the edges of steps, pooling briefly in worn corners, then spilling downward again toward the heart of the city. The journey was unhurried. Every sound seemed softened, the gentle patter of water against stone, the flutter of a bird's wings seeking shelter, the distant hum of quiet, conversation from windows half open to the cool night. The traveler passed through a small square where a fountain stood. Its basin overflowed with rainwater, reflecting the glow of nearby lanterns. In its rippling surface, the traveler thought they saw something, not their reflection, but a faint shimmer. As if the fountain held a doorway made of light. They leaned closer, and for the briefest moment, the sound of the rain seemed to change, shifting from an earthly rhythm to something older, more melodic, like a song sung softly beneath the world. It faded as quickly as it came, leaving only ripples in the water and a sense that the gardens were calling. The keeper of the gate at the far end of the square, a narrow passageway wound upward toward the terraces. The steps were slick with moss, and the air grew cooler as the traveler climbed, Halfway up, they came upon a wooden gate draped with flowering vines. Beneath it sat a woman, her posture calm and unhurried, her face half hidden beneath a wide straw hat. She appeared to be weaving something, thin strands of reeds forming a long, delicate braid that shimmered faintly in the lamplight. The traveler hesitated, then spoke softly. "Is this the way to the hanging gardens?" The woman looked up, and when she smiled, it was as though she had been expecting them. "It depends," she said, her voice quiet but kind. "Are you awake or dreaming?" The traveler blinked. "I'm not sure, then perhaps," the woman said, setting aside her weaving. "You're ready to see them." She rose slowly, brushing rain from her sleeves, and stepped aside. The gate creaked open on its own, revealing a path that shimmered faintly with mist and moonlight. The traveler started forward, but paused. "Who are you?" The woman's eyes gleamed softly beneath the brim of her hat. "I am the one who waits at the edge of wonder," she said. "But you may call me Safra." The first terraces, the traveler stepped through the gate, the world shifted. The rain grew softer, not gone, but finer, as if falling through a veil of dreams. The air smelled of herbs and honey. All around, plants of impossible beauty stretched toward the sky, some with petals that caught the light like glass, others that shimmered faintly as though they were breathing. The ground beneath their feet was smooth, and small channels carried clear water between the stones, flowing in quiet harmony. It was peaceful in a way that felt alive, not empty or still, but filled with gentle movement, the slow bend of ferns beneath the rain, the hum of bees half asleep beneath blossoms, the whisper of leaves that seemed to murmur secrets to one another. Safra followed behind, her steps nearly silent. "This," she said softly, "is the first terrace, the garden of memory. Here grow all the moments that once brought stillness to the heart. Each flower blooms from something once remembered with love." The traveler knelt beside a patch of pale blue flowers and touched one gently. At once, a scene bloomed behind their eyes. The image of a small room, candlelit, a cup of tea steaming beside an open book. The quiet peace of a rainy afternoon long ago, when they opened their eyes again. The flower glowed faintly just for a moment, then dimmed back into stillness. The traveler exhaled softly. "I thought memories were gone once they faded." Safra smiled. "No, they return here to rest. They bloom again each time someone remembers to breathe." The path between terraces, the two continued upward. The path wound gently through arches covered in ivy, each one opening into a slightly higher level of the gardens between terraces. Small waterfalls spilled softly from one pool to the next, creating a gentle rhythm that matched the traveler's heartbeat. The rain above never stopped, but here it felt like a blessing, not a storm. They passed trees with silver leaves that reflected the lantern light, and vines that shimmered faintly in the dimness, their colors changing with every angle: green, gold, violet, blue dot at times. Faint lights floated among the branches, not fireflies, but tiny orbs of warmth that moved like slow thoughts drifting through water. "Are those spirits?" the traveler asked. Safra shook her head gently. "No, they're dreams, waiting for a place to rest." The traveler nodded, saying nothing, only listening to the rain, the waterfalls, the low hum that seemed to pulse through the stones themselves. Each sound blended together into one quiet melody, a song without words, an invitation to slow down, to soften, to rest. The second terrace, when they reached the next terrace, the air had grown warmer. touched with the scent of citrus and night-blooming flowers. Here, the rain shimmered faintly as it fell, as though lit from within, and in the center of the terrace stood a pool surrounded by marble steps. The water was perfectly still, yet its surface rippled with soft light. The reflection of stars that weren't in the sky above the traveler gazed at them, fascinated. Why are there stars in the water? Safra knelt beside the pool. Because this garden remembers the skies that once were. Every tear, every drop of rain, every reflection, all return here. To be still again. She dipped her hand into the water, and as her fingers brushed the surface, the stars brightened for a moment, their light rippling outward like laughter. "Would you like to try?" she asked. The traveler hesitated, then knelt and placed their hand beside hers. The water was cool and silken. At once the surface stirred and an image appeared, the reflection of the traveler's own face. Yes, but softened by peace, as if they were already dreaming. The reflection smiled, and in that smile was something wordless. The understanding that everything they sought had been waiting for them in stillness all along. A soft ending to the night as they rose from the pool. The rain eased further, falling now as a mist that clung gently to skin and hair. Somewhere in the distance, a wind chime sounded, slow, hollow, ancient. Safra began to walk toward a nearby archway. "Beyond this terrace lies the Garden of Silence," she said. "It is the highest and the deepest, but we'll reach it in time. For now, rest a little." The traveler found a bench carved of smooth stone beneath a tree. Its leaves glowed faintly silver, casting soft patterns of light on the ground. They sat down, feeling the warmth of the stones seep gently into their body. The rain whispered overhead, steady and kind. Their eyelids grew heavy. Every sound, the rain, the leaves, the chimes, merged into one steady rhythm, and the traveler felt themselves beginning to drift, their breath deep and even, their body weightless and safe. Safra's voice reached them, faint and distant. "Do not worry where the path leads," she whispered. "In the hanging gardens, every step is a return." The traveler smiled softly as their eyes closed. The rain continued to fall. The gardens shimmered faintly in the mist, and somewhere in the rhythm of the night, the first true piece of sleep began to bloom. The sound of rain was the first thing they heard, not a storm nor a downpour, but the soft, endless rhythm of droplets falling on leaves, each one like the hush of a heartbeat slowed by peace. The traveler stirred slowly, as though waking within a dream. They were still seated on the smooth stone bench, the silver-leaved tree arching above them like a guardian of quiet light. The air was soft, almost velvet. The rain no longer felt wet, only cool and feather-light against the skin, as if it were made not of water, but of quiet itself. Somewhere nearby, the sound of trickling water echoed a hidden stream weaving through the terrace. It sang a low, constant melody, calm and sure, a sound that made the mind drift easily toward thoughtless peace. The traveler opened their eyes fully. The world had changed. The rain still fell, but the sky above was no longer clouded. It was luminous, faintly golden, as though dawn had arrived, but only within the garden itself. Every leaf shimmered softly with its own light. Flowers that had been closed before now bloomed quietly, their petals opening like sighs dot, and the air itself hummed, faint, steady, like a heartbeat beneath the earth. Safra stood nearby, watching the traveler awaken. She smiled, her straw hat now resting at her side. "You slept," she said gently. I didn't mean to, the traveler murmured, stretching slowly. Safra shook her head. No one ever does. The garden decides when you rest. The traveler's eyes moved toward the archway she had mentioned before. A curved entrance framed in vines that shimmered with tiny beads of rainlight. It seemed to draw the eye, yet offered no sense of urgency, only quiet invitation. Is that the Garden of Silence? Safra nodded. It is the heart of this place. It doesn't speak, it listens. And within its quiet, you may hear what has always waited for you. The walk to the heart, they began walking together. Each step made no sound, as though the path had been woven from the rain itself. The air deepened, the sounds around them fading into softer tones, until even the rain was no longer heard, only felt as a cool, tender presence that moved with them. They passed through an archway of living vines. As they did, the traveler noticed something strange. The world beyond seemed larger than the space could allow, as though stepping through the gate had opened into another dream entirely. The terrace spread out before them like a vast meadow floating in mist. Tall silver grasses bent and swayed as though stirred by invisible tides. Lanterns, shaped like blossoms, hung suspended in the air, their light gentle, pulsing in rhythm with unseen music. In the distance, a wide circular pool lay still, and in its center stood a single tree, its branches wide, its leaves shimmering between green and gold, its roots descending deep into the glowing water below. That, Safra whispered, is the tree of stillness. Every drop of rain that falls in the gardens passes through its roots. It listens to all that is, and in return, it gives silence. The traveler looked toward the tree, feeling an inexplicable pull, a soft longing, as though the hush itself were calling their name. Beneath the tree, the two walked slowly through the silver grasses until they reached the pool's edge. The water was unlike anything the traveler had seen. It reflected the sky perfectly, yet the surface moved as if it were breathing, rising and falling ever so gently. Step in, Safra said. The traveler hesitated. Will it hold me? Yes, she said, her voice like the hush of a lullaby. It always holds what it welcomes. They removed their shoes and stepped forward. The water was cool but not cold. It seemed to recognize them, to mold softly around their feet. As they waded toward the tree, the surface glowed faintly beneath each step, leaving ripples of soft golden light that spread outward and faded when they reached the base of the great tree. They placed a hand against its trunk. It felt warm, alive. A slow pulse, steady as a heartbeat, thudded beneath the bark, and then the sound of rain, softer than before, filled their mind. But this time, the sound carried words, not spoken ones, felt ones, whispers that came from within the quiet. Be still, the rain murmured. You have wandered far, but you were never lost. The traveler closed their eyes. For a long moment, there was only the sound of their own breathing, and the steady rhythm of rain flowing through roots and branches. Every worry, every thought, every memory that once felt heavy seemed to dissolve into that rhythm, washed clean and returned to stillness. The river of dreams, when the traveler opened their eyes again. They found themselves standing not in the pool, but beside a river, wide, slow, and shimmering with reflections of the gardens above. Safra stood across the water, smiling softly. You're hearing what the gardens remember, she said. This river carries dreams, not yours alone, but those of every heart that ever longed for peace. The traveler watched as the water flowed gently, carrying faint lights within it, small glowing shapes that drifted like lanterns beneath the surface. "Where do they go?" they asked. Saphra's voice was almost a whisper. "They return to the sky. Each drop becomes part of the rain again, a dream falling softly back to earth." The traveler knelt by the water's edge. One light drifted close, a golden orb pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Without thinking, they reached out a hand. The moment their fingers touched the light, it expanded and an image bloomed before their eyes. They saw themselves, not as they were now, but as a child, standing beneath a summer storm. Face turned upward, arms outstretched to the sky, laughing freely as rain soaked their clothes. A warmth spread through their chest, something pure, forgotten but never truly lost. When the vision faded, the orb of light dissolved into the river, and the water glowed softly in response, as if thanking them for remembering. The keeper's farewell Saphra stepped closer, her bare feet making no sound. "You've seen what most never do," she said softly. "The heart of silence." The traveler turned to her. "It feels like I could stay here forever." Saphra smiled gently, her eyes bright with kindness. "You could, but the gardens are not a place to remain. They are a place to return to, again and again, each time you close your eyes and let the rain speak." The traveler nodded slowly. "Then, will I remember this?" "In your heart, yes," she said. "Not always in words, but in the way your breath will soften when it rains, in the way your thoughts will quiet when you listen." The wind stirred softly through the tall grasses. The lanterns above began to drift higher, their glow rising like gentle stars, until they disappeared into the luminous sky. Saphra took one step back, her outline beginning to shimmer like mist. "Rest now," she said. "The garden is within you. Let it rain, and you will find it again." The traveler blinked, and the world changed once more. The rain sounded different, heavier now, falling against stone, rooftops, and leaves. The air smelled of the real city, damp earth, blooming jasmine. Distant firelight. They were standing once again at the edge of the square, the fountain overflowing gently with rainwater. But it felt different now. The rain wasn't merely falling on them. It was falling through them, calming, cleansing. Familiar dot, the bells in the distance chimed once more, soft and clear, echoing through the mist. The traveler looked upward. For a moment, they thought they could see it, the faint outline of terraces high above the clouds, gardens drifting in the night, lit from within by golden light. They smiled, pulling their cloak closer, and began to walk slowly through the rain, each step lighter, each breath easier. And somewhere, far above, the hanging gardens listened and sent one last blessing of gentle rain to guide the traveler safely home. The rain had slowed to a tender drizzle by the time the traveler returned to the winding streets of the old city, each droplet glimmering in the lantern light like tiny fragments of moonstones scattered upon cobblestones, polished by centuries of footsteps. The air was cool and heavy with the scent of wet earth and jasmine, and every surface seemed to shimmer as though brushed by memory, the roofs breathing out faint mist, the quiet windows fogged with stories, and the alleyways filled with that gentle sound of dripping water that makes time itself, seemed to soften at the edges. The traveler walked without direction, their steps unhurried, their thoughts quiet. Something within them had shifted, not dramatically, but deeply, like a tide that had changed beneath still waters. It wasn't that the city looked different now. The same narrow streets twisted through the fog, The same lanterns swayed on rusted hooks, and the same cats watched from dry stoops. But there was something in the way they noticed it all, as though the world had grown wider, slower, and far more tender than before. They paused beneath an old fig tree that leaned across a quiet courtyard. The rain slid softly down its leaves, gathering at the tips before falling in rhythmic drops onto a puddle below. Ripples spread outward, then slowly faded, leaving the surface smooth again. The traveler stood there for a long while, watching that pattern, the forming, the falling, the fading, realizing that everything in the world, even the smallest droplet, knew how to return to stillness. A faint hum reached their ears, the sound of someone humming an old tune. Across the courtyard, an elderly woman sat on her doorstep beneath the shelter of an awning, a lantern beside her casting a golden pool of light. She was polishing a small clay pot, her hands moving with the calm rhythm of one who has known many seasons of rain. When she looked up, her eyes met the traveler's, and she smiled a slow, knowing smile, as if she too could feel the hush that clung to the night. "Evening rain has a way of making us remember," she said softly, her voice carrying easily through the damp air. The traveler smiled faintly, stepping closer. "Remember what?" The woman lifted her eyes to the drifting mist. "Everything we've forgotten to listen to, the sound of water, the breath between thoughts, the quiet that waits for us when we finally stop hurrying." She paused, then added gently, "You've come from the hills, haven't you? You carry their silence." The traveler blinked, surprised. "You can feel it." She nodded slowly. "When someone has truly listened to the rain, it stays with them. It changes the way they move, the way they breathe, even the way they look at the world." Her words lingered like a soft bell tone in the traveler's mind. They thanked her quietly, and after a few more exchanged smiles, continued down the narrow street. But the old woman's words stayed, echoing gently, blending with the faint drip of rain on stone until they became indistinguishable. From the night itself, the city at this hour was half asleep. The markets had closed, the awnings rolled down, the shop doors bolted with soft wooden clicks. Yet the air held a feeling of gentle wakefulness, not the bright energy of day, but something deeper, like the steady breathing of a sleeper lost in a peaceful dream. The traveler passed a bakery that smelled of sweet cardamom and warm bread, a tea house where the faint clink of cups still drifted through an open window, and a little bookstore where a lone candle flickered beside a sleeping cat. Each small detail, each flicker of light, felt strangely alive, as though the entire city were breathing in rhythm with the soft rainfall. Content just to exist. When the traveler reached the old stone bridge, they stopped. Below it, the river moved lazily through the mist, its surface rippling with the faintest touch of rain. Reflections of lanterns floated across the water. Long lines of gold that shimmered, broke, and came together again, endlessly repeating like thoughts that had learned to flow without struggle. The traveler leaned on the railing, their hands cool against the damp stone, and gazed down into the gentle current. Somewhere in the slow drift of water, they thought they saw it just for a heartbeat, the faint shimmer of golden light beneath the surface. Like the dream river from the hanging gardens, they breathed out softly, a small sigh of wonder and peace. Perhaps the two rivers were not separate after all. Perhaps the world above and the world within were only reflections of one another, connected by the quiet of rain. Farther along the bridge, a musician sat beneath an overhang, playing a slow melody on a wooden flute. The notes rose and fell like waves, soft and circular, never quite ending, only folding gently back into themselves. The traveler stood listening, and after a moment, the musician glanced up, his eyes shining in the lantern light. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" he said. His voice was as calm as the music he played. The traveler nodded. "It feels different tonight, quieter, as if the whole city is listening." The musician smiled. "It is. On nights like this, when the rain falls just right, the stones remember the songs of the past. Every drop that lands carries an echo of something ancient, the laughter of the first builders, the sighs of lovers who met beneath the lanterns, the prayers of those who walked these streets long ago." He lifted the flute again, letting a new tune drift into the mist, low, haunting, and tender, like the sound of moonlight finding its way through leaves. The traveler closed their eyes and listened, the music and the rain blending into a single, timeless rhythm. For a moment, there was no difference between hearing and breathing, between the world and the self. There was only stillness, shaped by sound. When the music faded, the traveler opened their eyes again. The musician had stopped playing and was simply sitting there, smiling faintly, as though he too had been carried somewhere far away. "Thank you," the traveler whispered. He nodded. "The rain teaches us all. Some listen with their hearts. Others only hear the weather." He tilted his head slightly. "You've been to the gardens, haven't you?" The traveler hesitated, then smiled faintly. "I think so. It's hard to tell if it was a dream." The musician's eyes gleamed. "Dreams and gardens, they often grow in the same soil." He returned to his flute, the melody soft as mist. The traveler lingered for a moment longer, then moved on, feeling lighter with every step. The rain deepened again, not with force, but with fullness, a continuous whispering that seemed to speak directly to the traveler's thoughts. It wasn't language, not really, but something older and simpler, the same rhythm they had felt beneath the tree of stillness, the same hush that had lived inside the river of dreams. Every surface glowed faintly in the lamplight, and the scent of wet stone mixed with the sweetness of evening blooms. The traveler wandered through narrow lanes and across open courtyards, through arches hung with ivy and past old fountains singing to themselves. Time no longer mattered. There was only the endless flow of quiet movement, of breath and step and rain and memory. At last, the traveler came to a small square they did not remember seeing before. In its center stood a fountain, simple, shallow, shaped like an open flower. The water that spilled from its center was silver under the lanterns, and the ripples spread outward in delicate circles. They sat on the edge of the fountain, feeling the smooth stone cool against their palms, and watched as raindrops joined the fountain's surface, each one merging effortlessly into the whole. Around them, the city seemed to fade into a blur of soft sound, footsteps echoing faintly, distant laughter, the whisper of leaves brushing one another in the night breeze. It felt, somehow, as though the hanging gardens had followed them down into the city, threading their quiet presence through every sound and shadow. The traveler tilted their head back and looked at the sky. Clouds moved slowly above, pale grey against the deeper dark, and through their shifting shapes, they could see the faint outline of something vast, terraces layered with light, just as they had seen before. Only this time, it wasn't far away. It was everywhere, in the sky, in the rain, in the reflection of the water before them. They closed their eyes. The fountain's soft gurgle became the murmur of rivers. The patter of rain became the steady rhythm of a heartbeat. The city's hum became the quiet breathing of the world itself. And within that sound, they heard it again, the voice of the gardens, low and distant, speaking not with words but with feeling. Peace is not a place you find, it seemed to say. It is a way of seeing what was always there. The traveler smiled in the dark, a slow, serene smile that seemed to rise from the very center of their being. They breathed deeply once, twice, feeling the air flow through them like gentle water. The tension that had once lived in their shoulders and chest dissolved completely. They opened their eyes again to find the rain still falling, slow and steady, silver against the cobblestones. The lanterns swayed, their glow softened by mist. Somewhere in the distance, the musician's flute played again, a melody that drifted through the rain like a dream that refused to end. The traveler rose, their movements fluid, unhurried. They began walking once more, not to reach anywhere, but simply to move through the world that now felt alive and listening. Each step was light, each breath deep and quiet, each heartbeat an echo of the rain. The city stretched before them, endless, shimmering, half asleep, and they moved through it like a drop of water returning to the sea, one with everything around them and above. The hanging gardens whispered softly to the night, their light falling like silver rain, their peace drifting gently through every dream, every heart, every breath. The rain had quieted to a whisper by the time the traveler reached the edge of the city, that liminal place where cobblestone gave way to sand, where the lanterns dimmed and the scent of salt replaced the perfume of rain-soaked jasmine. The mist that rose from the sea wrapped around everything in a soft, luminous veil, houses fading into pale shapes, rooftops dissolving into sky, and the slow, eternal rhythm of the waves blending seamlessly with the steady breath of dawn. The traveler paused on a weathered pier, its wooden boards slick beneath their boots, glistening with droplets that mirrored the faint pink glow on the horizon. They could hear the ocean breathing, long, slow, and patient, as though it had been waiting for this moment of quiet. Each wave rolled toward the shore, unfolded in a sigh, and slipped back again, leaving trails of silver foam that shimmered in the dim light. The sky was beginning to pale. Not yet day, but no longer night, a tender space between, where dreams linger and reality has not quite woken. The traveler stood there, breathing deeply, letting the cool salt air fill their lungs. The taste of the sea mixed with the scent of the rain, and somewhere in that mingling of worlds, they felt something awaken inside them, something calm, vast, and wordless. The gentle sound of footsteps approached from behind. When they turned, they saw a figure emerging through the mist, a man dressed in loose robes of soft grey, carrying a lantern that glowed faintly gold against the pale morning light. His face was calm, the lines of age around his eyes softened by kindness. "You've come far," the man said, his voice low and melodic, like the hush of waves against the hull of a sleeping ship. The traveler nodded, unsure if the question was meant to be answered. "The rain led me," they said softly. "It brought me here." The man smiled, lifting the lantern slightly so that its glow touched the traveler's face. "It often does," he murmured. "The rain remembers the paths the rest of us forget. You followed it well." He gestured toward the sea. "Would you walk with me? The tide is changing. It's a quiet hour, perfect for listening." The traveler hesitated only for a heartbeat, then nodded. Together, they walked along the shoreline, their steps slow and soundless on the wet sand. The mist swirled around them like silk, soft and luminous, blurring the line between earth and sky until it seemed they were walking through a dream. The man spoke after a long silence, his words drifting easily between the waves. "This harbor," he said, "is called the Threshold of Dawn. Long ago, sailors believed it was a place where dreams gathered before taking shape, where the sea listened to the hearts of those who came to its edge." He looked out across the water, his eyes reflecting the dim glow of the lanterns still burning on distant boats. "They said that if you came here after a night of rain and watched the morning rise, you could hear the sea speak your truest thoughts back to you, not in words, but in waves." The traveler listened, their gaze following the curve of the horizon where light was beginning to bloom, a soft rose gold shimmer spreading gently across the water. "And have you heard it speak?" they asked quietly. The man smiled. "Every morning, but only because I've learned to be silent long enough to listen." He stopped walking and turned toward the traveler. "The rain teaches you stillness. The sea teaches you surrender. Together, they teach you peace." The traveler let those words wash over them, feeling their truth unfold slowly, like the petals of a flower warmed by light. They looked out toward the horizon again, where the first hints of sunlight touched the clouds, turning them to gold. The rain had nearly stopped now. Only the occasional droplet fell, soft and hesitant, as though reluctant to leave the sky. Each one landed on the sea and disappeared without a sound. As they stood together, a faint melody drifted through the air, so delicate it could have been mistaken for the wind. It came from a boat anchored not far from shore, a small vessel with sails furled, its deck lit by the soft glow of hanging lanterns. The music was slow and circular, a lullaby made of low notes and long pauses, as though the ocean itself were humming. The traveler felt an ache of recognition. It was the same kind of melody the musician had played on the bridge, wordless, timeless, infinite. The man followed their gaze. "Ah," he said softly, "that is the dream voyager. It sails between waking and sleep, carrying those who wish to rest." "The dream voyager," the traveler repeated, their voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. "It's not a ship you board with your feet, but with your heart. When one has listened long enough to the rain and the sea, the voyager finds them." He turned toward the traveler, his eyes kind but serious. "Would you like to see it more clearly?" The traveler felt no fear, only curiosity softened by calm. "Yes," the man extended his hand, palm open. "Then close your eyes," he said gently, "and breathe as the sea breathes." The traveler obeyed, their eyes fluttering shut. They inhaled deeply, feeling the cool air fill their chest, and exhaled slowly, letting everything else fall away. The city, the streets, even the memory of footsteps. There was only the breath, steady and patient, rising and falling in rhythm with the tide as they breathed. The sound of waves deepened, no longer outside but within, flowing through them like a second heartbeat. The mist grew brighter behind their closed eyes, shimmering gold and silver. And then the ground beneath their feet seemed to shift, not falling away, but transforming. The sensation of standing replaced by the gentle sway of water beneath them. When they opened their eyes again, they were standing on the deck of the Dream Voyager. The ship was unlike any they had seen before. Its wood glowed faintly as though carved from moonlight, and its sails shimmered with colors that changed with every breath, sometimes pearl, sometimes silver blue, sometimes translucent as mist. The air around it was thick with the scent of rain and salt and something sweeter, the smell of dreams. Unfolding lanterns hung from the mast, each one holding a small flicker of light that pulsed in time with the traveler's heartbeat. They looked down and saw that the sea beneath the ship was calm and radiant, filled with reflections that moved like living constellations. The man stood beside them still, though his face seemed softer now, less distinct, as though made of the same light as the mist itself. "Welcome aboard," he said quietly. "The Voyager sails only where the heart is willing to drift. Tonight, it will take you where the rain was born." The traveler stepped closer to the railing, gazing out at the endless horizon. There was no wind, yet the ship began to move, gliding silently across the mirror-like water, leaving no wake behind. The sound of waves softened until there was only the hush of motion, the slow creak of wood, and the steady rhythm of breath. The traveler felt utterly weightless, as if their body had become part of the mist, part of the sea, part of the silence. As the ship sailed farther from shore, the clouds above began to thin, revealing a sky filled not with stars, but with soft lights, like lanterns floating far above, drifting slowly in invisible currents. Each light glowed with a different hue: amber, sapphire, rose, pale silver, and together they formed a vast tapestry that shimmered like water seen through glass. The traveler stared upward, awe spreading through them like warmth. "What are they?" they whispered. The man's voice came from beside them, calm and distant. "Those are dreams," he said. "Every one of them a wish, a memory, a moment of peace sent upward from hearts that have rested well. The hanging gardens gather them, listen to them, and release them again as light, as rain, as hope." The traveler felt a deep ache of beauty, a tenderness that needed no words. They reached out instinctively, and for a moment, one of the lights drifted closer, hovering just above their palm. Inside it shimmered faint images: a quiet forest path, a candle flickering beside a window, a child's laughter echoing through rain. When the light touched their skin, it dissolved into warmth, and the traveler felt it spread through them, a memory of joy they hadn't realized they had forgotten. The man smiled softly. "You see," he said, "the gardens never truly leave you. They live in every raindrop that falls, in every dream that brings comfort. You've carried them with you all along." The ship sailed on, slow and sure, its path lit by the countless lanterns above and their reflections below. The traveler leaned against the railing, their eyelids heavy, their body melting deeper into calm. The motion of the ship rocked them gently, like the slow rhythm of breathing before sleep. The man's voice drifted through the air one last time, soft as a lullaby. "Rest now. The sea will hold you. The rain will sing to you. And when you wake, the world will be gentler for your dreaming." The traveler's eyes fluttered shut. The sound of waves became the sound of breath. The light of lanterns became the glow of dawn. The whisper of mist became the hush of dreams. And somewhere, far above and within, the hanging gardens bloomed once more, not in stone or soil, but in the stillness of a resting heart. The dream voyager glided onward, smooth as thought, silent as breath. The world around it had changed. The sea no longer looked like water, but like liquid glass, rippling faintly beneath a sky of slow-turning light. The stars above were no longer stars, but drifting blossoms, petals of soft gold and blue and lavender, falling gently through the air, vanishing before they touched the surface. The traveler stood at the ship's bow, eyes half closed, feeling their hearts beat in rhythm with the tide. Each pulse seemed slower than the last, softer, as though time itself were exhaling. They felt no weight, no edge of self, just the steady hum of peace that filled everything. The man with the lantern stood a few paces behind, watching with a calm, almost paternal stillness. His lantern glowed brighter now, its light expanding in gentle rings that shimmered over the deck, turning the mist into a golden haze. "You're nearly there," he said softly. "The place where dreams rest before they return to the world. The hanging gardens, not as they were built in stone, but as they exist in spirit." The first garden was only a reflection of this. The traveler turned, their voice barely a whisper. "Will I see them?" The man smiled faintly. "You already are." He lifted his lantern higher. The glow stretched outward, and the mist began to part, not quickly, but with the slowness of dawn spreading across a sleeping valley. Through the veil, shapes began to emerge. At first it seemed they were clouds, vast billowing layers of silver and rose, floating above the mirrored sea. But as the ship drifted closer, the traveler saw that the clouds were in fact terraces suspended in air, each one overflowing with trees, vines, and blossoms that glowed from within. The leaves shimmered like starlight caught in dew. Flowers opened and closed in slow rhythm, breathing with the world. Tiny streams of rain flowed along invisible paths, falling softly from one terrace to another, their sound like distant laughter, a sound older than time. The hanging gardens were not bound by gravity or stone. They floated, dreamlike, in vast spirals, each layer holding a different hue of light: emerald and silver, amber and sapphire, gold and rose, until the whole sky shimmered like a living aurora. The traveler's eyes filled with tears, though they didn't know why. Perhaps it was the beauty, or the silence, or the feeling of homecoming, that sense of having arrived. Somewhere the soul had always remembered. The man lowered his lantern and looked toward the gardens with deep reverence. "Every drop of rain that ever fell begins here," he said softly. "Every dream of peace, every breath of rest, every gentle moment of stillness in the hearts of those who sleep. This is the wellspring of renewal. The gardens never wither because they are tended by the dreamers themselves." The dream voyager slowed as it approached the lowest terrace, where a soft glow of silver light poured down like a waterfall. The air was warm and cool all at once, touched by mist and fragrance, the scent of jasmine, rain, and something older, sweeter, impossible to name. The traveler stepped forward, and the moment their foot crossed the edge of the deck, the surface of the air beneath them shimmered, not solid, not liquid, but something between. It held them as gently as water holds a leaf. The man smiled, his voice no more than a whisper. "Go on. The gardens are waiting. You won't need the ship beyond this point." The traveler turned back once. "Will I see you again?" He nodded slowly. "In every dream that begins with rain." And with that, he raised the lantern one final time. Its light grew brighter and brighter until it seemed to fill the entire horizon, then faded softly, leaving behind only the whisper of the waves and the faint, rhythmic sound of rain falling upward into light. The traveler stepped onto the first terrace. It was made of mist, yet felt solid beneath their feet. The surface shimmered with faint ripples that glowed as they moved. Around them, towering ferns swayed gently in a wind that did not disturb the air. And from the leaves, droplets of water fell, not down, but sideways. Floating softly through space, they began to walk, their steps soundless, each motion leaving a faint shimmer in the air behind. The path wound upward in a slow, spiraling climb, bordered by streams of luminous water that flowed uphill, their light illuminating the way as they climbed. The traveler noticed small shapes among the flowers, creatures that seemed made of light and rain. Tiny birds with translucent wings, their feathers glinting like drops of dew. Soft-furred animals curled asleep under the leaves, their breathing synchronized with the hum of the air. And everywhere, petals drifting like dreams, dissolving before they touched the ground. The higher they went, the quieter the world became. Even the rain no longer made a sound. It simply was, falling and rising in perfect stillness. And then they reached the heart of the gardens. It was a vast open space, ringed with trees whose branches arched overhead to form a canopy of living light. The leaves glowed a deep, peaceful blue, and hanging from every branch were spheres of water, droplets large as lanterns, each one holding a reflection of a different sky. Some shimmered with golden clouds, others held a night full of stars. A few even showed faces, people sleeping peacefully far away. The traveler stood among them, entranced. They reached out to touch one, and as their fingers brushed its surface, they saw inside it a memory, not theirs, but familiar. A child sitting by a window, watching the rain, the sound of gentle laughter, the hush of peace that follows forgiveness. They withdrew their hands slowly, and the droplet continued to glow, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. From behind them came a voice, not the man's, but something vaster, woven into the air itself. It spoke not in words, but in feeling, a sound that reached deeper than hearing. You are part of the rain now. You are part of every dream that finds its way home. The traveler felt warmth spread through their chest, dissolving the last traces of weight and worry. Their thoughts slowed, their breath deepened, and they felt themselves begin to blend with the light, with the sound, with the air. They walked toward the center of the clearing, where a single pool shimmered, perfectly still. The water reflected everything, sky, stars, and the traveler's own face. But as they leaned closer, the reflection began to change. It softened, rippled, and then revealed something else. A vast garden stretching endlessly in all directions, filled with light and peace. It was not separate from them, but part of them, growing from within. The voice returned, softer now, like a sigh. Rest here. Drift. Let the rain within you fall into stillness. The world will wait for your waking. The traveler knelt beside the pool and touched the surface. The instant their fingers met the water, it felt like silk, cool and luminous, wrapping around them, drawing them gently downward. They did not fall. They floated. The sensation was not of sinking, but of returning, as though they were being carried back to the place from which all things begin. The water closed around them softly, weightless and warm, and as it did, the light grew dim, shifting from gold to silver to the deep blue of night. And in that blue, there was no separation, no sky or sea, no self or other, no thought or time, only stillness, only peace, only the endless rhythm of breath, slow, deep, and even rising and falling like the tide. Somewhere above, rain continued to fall, gentle and unhurried, each drop a lullaby, each ripple a heartbeat. The gardens swayed softly in the eternal breeze, their leaves whispering the language of dreams, and within that silence, the traveler rested, no longer a wanderer, no longer searching, but simply being. The light that had once been the man's lantern drifted nearby, its glow now part of the stars. It flickered once, like a heartbeat, then dissolved into the mist, not gone. Only everywhere, the rain, the sea, the gardens, the traveler, all became one, And in the far distance, over the silver horizon, the first light of dawn began to bloom once more, soft, pale, patient. The world waited quietly for its return. But for now, there with only rest, the deepest rest, the kind that comes not from escape, but from coming home, the kind that hums beneath every dream, whispering, "You are safe, you are held, you are loved." And as that final whisper echoed, the world of waking faded gently away, leaving only the rhythm of slow breathing, the hush of rain, and the infinite stillness of the hanging gardens, swaying forever in the quiet of sleep.